Hey, welcome to your weekend mini nerve. We gather here today to take apart the CNN trailer for the forthcoming 3-part documentary entitled American Prince, how original, JFK Jr. Now, today's mini is branded a Dwarf Minds special report. This is no offense to people who have the medical condition, but like dwarf stars, there are dwarf minds. This is a Dwarf Minds special report, as we are not only dealing with an OG of a pop cultural / political dwarf mind in JFK Jr., but also we are dealing with the dwarf minds over at CNN who greenlit this piece of romanticized and, in my opinion, dangerous continuation of the Kennedy myth, the dwarf minds who wrote and produced it, and the dwarf minds of the talking heads featured here, including one Carol Radziwill, who I guarantee will be found one day dead, huffing the fumes of Kennedy exhaust in a borrowed garage, Cindy Crawford and Robert De Niro. Truly, the observations contained herein are astounding in their originality. We are revisiting this guy for the millionth time. It's not a significant anniversary, but here we are. CNN's doing everything they can to get some eyeballs after George Clooney, who's going to save them now. JFK Jr., let's exhume that body. We can't because he was cremated because we were trying to avoid an official inquest into the cause of those deaths. Just my opinion, but that's how the Kennedys work. Okay, so we're going to begin. We're going to just take this thing apart bit by bit, brick by brick. Let's begin.
He was pretty much the most famous guy in the world.
Unless you know him personally, he is a myth.
John became the biggest celebrity in America when he was conceived.
Okay, first of all, really, I'm going to take issue with this. That is Stephen Gillian, if I'm saying his name correctly. Now, he was a professor of history who I believe met John Jr. when he was teaching a class on the Vietnam War. And JFK Jr. was taking the class, and Gillian was teaching about President Kennedy's decision to escalate troop levels in Vietnam, I believe, at a certain point. And JFK Jr. raised his hand and he was like, "You're wrong. You're wrong." And Gillian said, "I'm not, and you should do the reading." And then JFK Jr. showed up to class the next day and said, "Hey, you know who I talked to last night? George McNamara, like one of his father's like top Vietnam strategists." And George McNamara says, "You're wrong." And George McNamara was just telling JFK Jr. what he wanted to hear, which was what everybody in his life did. And Steve Gillian, this guy, in his own book, in the biography, the boot-looking biography he wrote of JFK Jr., said he just let it go. He didn't fight JFK Jr. because, like, what was the point? You know, he's JFK Jr. And I think that Steve Gillian had a little bit of a crush on JFK Jr. He became the guy's lackey, okay? JFK Jr., when he founded his stupid, unreadable magazine, which we will get to, he didn't write his own editor's letters. They usually don't, but like he would, but this is the thing. He would call Steve Gillian like the night before it was supposed to go to the printers, like at 9:00 at night. And this is before everybody had cell phones, and leave like a message on his answering machine going, "Oh, hey, Steve, it's your pal, John." He just preferred to go by John. "You know, why don't you do me a favor and do my homework for me and write my editor's letter? It's got to be about X, Y, and Z topics, and it's due tomorrow at 8 a.m. Cool, thanks, bye." And this idiot would do it. Now, he goes on to say in this documentary that JFK Jr. was the most famous man in the world upon conception. Let's get real. Not if he hadn't been hot. Not if he hadn't had the body of a Greek god and a movie star face to match. This guy otherwise had nothing to offer. He was not smart. He had no talent. He did not have an original mind. Shades of Meghan Markle. He was just a hot guy looking for a good time. You would have this beginning. You would think this guy wasn't destined to go kill his young wife and her equally young, beautiful sister in a wholly avoidable plane crash. almost smashing into a packed American Airlines jetliner carrying over 200 souls that night. No, we're gonna stay in our pretend playhouse and moon over the dead American royal and future president of the United States that was John F. Kennedy Jr. Now, on to John as a free spirit.
The boy who would be king.
Hello, I'm John Kennedy.
There was a pressure. You're a Kennedy.
John was just like a little bit more of a free spirit.
A free spirit. That is Kennedy apologist speak for reckless, dangerous, entitled, and constantly putting the lives of others at risk, as most Kennedy men have done throughout the centuries. Way too many New Yorkers have stories of this guy nearly crashing into them while they were walking or just minding their own business. He's speeding around town on his bicycle or his stupid rollerblades. I just read a story of someone talking about what a character JFK was. He was so quirky. He was so quirky and athletic. He was not athletic. That's part of the myth. He wasn't. He was very clumsy. He was a bad swimmer. A myth about, not a myth, a story rather, about him heading out of a gym on his bicycle with his rollerblades still on his feet. Like he was going to ride the bicycle with his rollerblades still on his feet. That's an idiot. It's a public menace. Oh, and by the way, he got his then girlfriend, the movie star Daryl Hannah, he got her dog killed. He was out walking the dog, and he got lost in his own bullshit because he was such a narcissist, and the dog got away from him and got run over by a car and died. And that story was confirmed to me by multiple people. So, you're responsible for the death of an innocent dog because you're just too distracted with your own garbage. I mean, I would love stories like this. That's a documentary. I should have gotten a call, but of course they didn't call me because I tell the truth. That would be a documentary worth watching. Anyway, here we go. This is treated as like, in our hero's journey, this would be the high point. This is where our hero really accomplishes something through his own grit and hard work and burning desire to create something, to contribute to the culture. And they treat it always in these documentaries, but especially here, like it's some great triumph. His magazine, George. If you were not alive at the time of this launch, or if you it wasn't your thing and you didn't know about it, a magazine, just like a book title, just like a show title, it should tell you what you're getting. If I said to you, I'm starting this magazine and it's called George, would you know what it's about? Would you know why it exists? Why you should want to read it? The guy was thick. But he held a press conference because he's JFK Jr. He's finally gotten himself a job. He's going to become a member of the very media that he assails on the regular. Again, shades of Harry and Meghan. You can't have it both ways. You can't. But anyway, he threw this big presser, and the New York media, the world's media showed up so that John could present his new project. Okay, let's go.
His mom was a cultural icon.
Jackie had raised John to be media savvy.
He wanted to maybe break some rules, and then he did.
Ladies and gentlemen, meet George.
Okay. Now, that cover, that initial cover, also the concept was so stupid. So his idea that it was a magazine about ostensibly politics and pop culture, but it wasn't about anything interesting or the ways in which those two things were fusing. It was like they would interview politicians and then they would interview celebrities, and that was it. That was it. So it's like rip apart, like take half a Vogue magazine and half of what was then like a Time magazine, and then just sew that spine together. And that's basically the Frankenstein that was George. And then his brainstorm, his brilliant idea. Let's get supermodels like Cindy Crawford, who was on the inaugural cover. And what would be really fun is to dress them up like revolutionary American heroes. So there she is on the cover, dressed like George fucking Washington. I mean, it was so lame. It was so, even the executives he was trying to sell this magazine to, most of them were like, this guy came in and was like, hey, I'm God's gift to the earth. I'm JFK Jr. and you're lucky to be having a meeting with me. And I got this idea and I want you to give me hundreds of millions of dollars to launch a magazine. And yeah, I don't have any experience in the media except for being photographed all the time. And I was People Magazine's sexiest man alive. Does that count? George Magazine was one of the worst magazines ever. It was humorless. It wasn't smart. It wasn't clever. It wasn't interesting. When the biggest story of the 90s, the biggest political story of the 90s broke, Clinton-Lewinsky scandal, John wouldn't cover it. Wouldn't touch it. He said it was sensitive for him, given, what his father had done in the White House, which he knew like a fraction of. You cannot run a magazine and then say you're going to ignore the biggest story of the year because you don't like it. He also supported his cousin William Kennedy Smith in his very famous rape trial. JFK Jr. supported convicted rapist Mike Tyson. Now, I pulled this up. I pulled it up for my book and I wanted to pull it up for today's mini. March 1998. So Spy Magazine did a cover story on George and his failing magazine. And I pulled it up and I'm going to hold it up for you here. And you're also going to see it on screen. Spy Magazine, John Jr. sitting with his head resting on his chin and his eyebrows furrowed, because that's what all dumb people think smart people do when they're thinking really hard. The headline, as JFK Jr.'s magazine stumbles, what will he think of next? And they mention in here one of his initial ideas for a business, which was to begin manufacturing custom-made, mass-produced kayaks. Mass-produced, but custom-made. He also had an idea to, again, this is what he thinks of dogs. He had an idea to do a rent-a-dog business. And he told one of his friends who was doubtful that this would be a good idea, that it was a great idea, because every time John was out walking a dog that he didn't get killed through his own carelessness, people came up to him all the time to talk about the dog. What kind of dog do you have? What a great dog. What kind of breed is that? How old? Oh, really? And his friend was like, you know what, John? They're using the dog as an excuse to talk to you, you dummy. So next, we are going to get some scintillating, incisive, you've never heard it before commentary on what made JFK Jr. special.
He had the foresight to understand this is where the country is going.
He was like the number one pinup of the world.
This is what we're getting. This is the commentary. This is what passes for commentary. Okay, now enter the villain of this piece. I'm sure she is going to be depicted as the villain of this piece. Carol Radziwill will do what she is meant to be doing as a Kennedy adjacent fangirl who, in her book, What Remains, as I've said before, it's very clear to me, at least, just my opinion, that she was more in love with Carolyn than she was her own husband. But we need an antagonist and we need some sort of explanation as to why JFK Jr. died so young. And, Carolyn and her sister, they're just collateral damage. Let's take a look.
Carolyn Cassette. She made John more attractive, and John made her more attractive.
As a couple, they were sought after.
Wow. Carol Radziwill. As a couple, they were sought after. Breaking news. This commentary is for trash. It is hot garbage. It's like push a button on Robot Oprah. Whoa. That is so insightful. They were sought after. Next up.
They don't know the real story.
There are so many people.
Carol's
who
not
wanted
giving it to
John
you. Don't be
fail.
fooled.
There was enormous.
Doesn't even fucking know it.
They wanted quotes, they wanted scandal.
My opinion, Carol Radziwill doesn't know the real story. I don't think she does. As I've said before, John and Carolyn were both masters at making people feel closer to them than they were. Okay. And by the way, I think that's Tina Brown talking there saying, oh, they, meaning the press, of which Tina's a part. Why is she being an apologist for a media? She ran Vanity Fair. She turned it into a great publication. Why is she over here on this side of the fence? What's going on? They, the media, wanted scandal. Well, guess what? There was scandal. The Kennedys, their middle name is Scandal. He cheated on her. She cheated on him. She had an active cocaine habit by all reports. She had a histrionic personality. He thought there was nothing he couldn't do, including pilot a plane. And he could be an entitled, selfish asshole. And that entitlement cost 3 lives. But yeah, let's blame the media because they wanted scandal, while CNN, which is part of the media, is blaming the media. I mean, what planet are we on? Let's go.
He would be followed more than I was followed.
Being John Kennedy Jr., there's less room for error.
Okay, now, here is the money shot. Cindy Crawford, a rumored one-time paramour or just fling of John's, inaugural cover of Vogue, I'm sure his wife was really comfortable with that, says because he's John Kennedy Jr., there is less room for error. Number one, a lie. In fact, he was given runway beyond, and that is a terrible metaphor. But the guy, doors opened, chance after chance. You want to run for governor? Do it. You want to be president? Do it. He could have gone into space if he had lived to see the likes of Gail. There was plenty of room for error. That's what led to that plane crash. And that NTSB report, I've read it multiple times. There is no way to read it other than what it is, a complete and thorough indictment of the pilot. And it wasn't pilot error, as quote unquote, people like to sort of reframe this as like, at best, it was pilot error. No, he deliberately took off. The things that he did that night, I think make it clear he wanted to die. I don't think he cared, or maybe he wanted to take them down with him. Maybe he was that like, this is heresy to say, but these are things that should be discussed because again, it's not healthy for us to constantly mythologize these people who are dangerous. This guy was a public menace. He killed 2 young women and we're still valorizing him over at CNN and elsewhere. Oh my God, he was so handsome. You know, handsome people, good looking people are capable of a lot. You know why? Because they get away with everything. Let's tell the truth for once. All right, let's look at this.
It's very good to be the son of a legend.
It's complicated.
American Prince, JFK Jr. Premieres Saturday, August 9th on CNN.
So look at this at the very end. The branding, the music, the art direction, the logos. I just want to read a brief part from this memoir. It was published years ago. It was called Come to the Edge by JFK Jr.'s first very serious girlfriend named Christina Hogg. And this book was a revelation for me because she writes in here of multiple times JFK Jr. bullied her into risking her life with him, like going kayaking on the open sea without the required safety gear. And he didn't really even know how to kayak. He almost got them drowned twice violently, having her camp out at an active bombing site. There's a scene where he bullies her in her fancy coat to getting on the top of a Jeep and holding on to the rooftop face down while he gets in the driver's seat and starts the car and spins and spins and spins it super, super fast, doing donuts to see if she can hang on. He was cheating on her all the time and being very, very sloppy about it, just like he wanted her to know. He got married to Carolyn on Cumberland Island, which she introduced him to, and he didn't even care to give her so much as a heads up. He was awful to her. He was awful to her. And there is a moment in the book, just hang on one second. I marked it. Yeah, this is it. Okay. In the morning, they've camped out at night. They're on the vineyard. They're near Jackie's house. In the morning, I hear engines. I nudge him awake. I look up. A plane is buzzing low. Now in daylight, a large sign with danger, painted in black letters, glares at me. He told me it was illegal to land here. Again, laws are for other people, not JFK Jr., not Kennedy's. Illegal to land here, but neglected to say that while a third of the island is a bird sanctuary, the rest is a Navy bombing practice site. Later, his mother will berate him, and not only for the injury to the boat. He crashed the boat too. But you were with Christina, she keeps saying, to remind him that I was there in harm's way alongside him. Apparently, he didn't really give a shit. Okay. And as to what Caroline Kennedy, his sister, her husband, Ed, and the Kennedy family did to the Bissett family in the wake of that crash, it's in Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s writings in his own diaries that Ed, quote, I quote, bullied the shattered, grieving mother. We're going to be watching this. We will. And it's not just to laugh at it or give it the mockery it deserves, but because this is not a harmless documentary. It's not. It's an attempt to keep this version of JFK Jr. in the history books. This version, this fake version, not the real one. And the real one was a suicidal, homicidal maniac. My opinion. I think that's the truth. And it's ugly and it's uncomfortable, but we'd all be better off for it if we admitted the truth about the Kennedy men. And if the mainstream media would find a spine and some self-respect and do their jobs and investigate this lie that they have helped perpetrate ever since the assassination of JFK. Okay. Now, my final point I just want to say, or thing I want to tell you, is a book recommendation, because you guys are asking me for those. And until we get, a centralized thing up and running, I would recommend, this is thematically relevant, Black Water by Joyce Carol Oates. Again, this is a very slim volume. It is an incredible book. It is told from the point of view of Mary Jo Kopechne. It is a fictionalized version of what happened at Chappaquiddick, but it is a brilliant concept, brilliantly executed, of course, incredibly written. She's Joyce Carol Oates. Such a genius idea. Like it's like, as a writer, you're jealous. You're like, how'd she come up with that? Of course, it's from the point of view of this woman as she is dying in like 3 feet of water, so sure that the strapping young senator who has crashed this car has run for help and is coming back for her. That concludes this Dwarf Minds special report. I am your dedicated correspondent. We will see you back here next week for our full show on Tuesday at The Nerve, where you will never guess what we're about to say next.